Thank you so much, Ben, and good morning, everyone. As Ben said, my name is Susannah Collins, and I am a host and reporter for MLSsoccer.com, and it is an absolute pleasure to be a part of the Soccerex Connected and to host today's panel, The Future of the Soccer Broadcast Experience. And as Ben said, we have an absolute rock star panel today. So again, please join me in welcoming our guest. We have a man who happens to be my boss, the best boss in the biz, the Senior VP of Media, Seth. We have the EVP of Strategy and Planning at Univision, Olek Loewenstein. We have joining us the Senior Coordinating Producer at Fox, Zach Kenworthy, and the VP of Production at ESPN, Amy Rosenfeld. Guys, thank you so much for being with us bright and early this morning. And it's incredible to look back at my 5 seasons at MLS and see how innovation and technology have been a catalyst for deeper fan engagement and enhancing the broadcast experience. And as the technology has changed, consumption habits have also changed, and the fan behaviors have evolved. So now more than ever, the concept of innovation with a purpose has resonated, giving the challenges of producing games and engaging with fans during the wake of a global pandemic. So right now we're going to dive into what makes soccer fans unique and the ever-changing technology that is helping engage with the fans even while we are so far apart. So Seth, I'm going to start with you. I want you to give us a look at who are MLS fans and what makes them different.
Thank you, Susannah. I think before I jump into the question, I would like to acknowledge I am the best boss in the business. So I just want to agree with your sentiment there. Look, the fan, quite simply, the MLS fan is, we believe, the most valuable fan in North American sports. We're the youngest fan on TV. We're the most digitally innate, or the most digitally native fans going. In a world where consumption habits, as you talked about, are changing rapidly. Pre-COVID, and now you think about the way consumption habits are changing in the wake of the pandemic. Our partners, our sponsors, our broadcast partners, and most importantly, our fans are uniquely positioned to take advantage of the way that our sport was built, which is our sport was built on digital. You look at other North American sports, and they were built either on radio or TV. But our fans in the United States for soccer were built on digital. For a long time, they had to go and find the content to stream it, to look at blogs, to look at chat boards, those types of things. And it's paying dividends now as the shift happens to shorter form content, to digital content. We are uniquely positioned, and we think we're in a great spot to capitalize on the growth that we've seen for a lot of years and the growth that we know we can see into the future. So we're excited about our fans.
Love it. Zach, I believe you have some insight into the MLS fan and sort of what they look like as well.
Yeah, I mean, as part of our planning around the 25th season of Major League Soccer, we felt like it was a good marker in the road to sort of do some work with our strategy and consumer insights team as well to get a better understanding exactly of the fan Seth is talking about. So we commissioned a study at the beginning of the year. We've only had the initial wave of data returned to us. We're probably going to get a second wave here right before the playoffs kick in. And some of it we know already, but it's what Seth is talking about. It's a very young demographic, technologically savvy, generally quite educated, somewhat affluent with disposable income. And I think one of the big markers that we saw consistently open to new ideas, and that's just not new technologies, but also new ideas in the broadcast space as well. And I think that is very appealing to not just broadcasters, but advertisers as well, because this is a fan that's very hungry, wants to be engaged, and also wants to be challenged on viewing habits. So I think for that, it's an extremely appealing group, Susannah.
I love it. Amy, a question for you. What is it about the MLS fan that makes them so appealing and enticing, and a group that you want to bring into these broadcasts?
I think what's appealing is also a little bit challenging, which is the greatest appeal for the MLS fan. They are incredibly vocal. In fact, as I came in this morning, I had 50 emails about our various soccer coverage, including MLS, and there's a lot of opinions. However, it's a really educated audience. And so one of the things that makes them so appealing is that we actually we'll morph some of our coverage based on real-time feedback. So they're small but mighty. It's a very impactful voice, and we've been served well by listening to that vocal fan.
And Olek, a question for you. As you've sort of covered Major League Soccer, what has the evolution of the fan looked like? And what do you kind of expect to see? Do you think it'll kind of stay where it is right now? But if you could talk about that sort of transformation of where it was to what it looks like now.
So I think all the characteristics that Amy, Zach, and Seth have mentioned have gotten stronger, right? I think to add, I think the MLS is a little bit more family. If you think about comparing fans outside of the US versus fans in the US, I think you see more families going to stadiums rather than specific fans. You see that it's more diverse. I mean, I think comparing to other American sports, I think you can think of the fans as being more diverse, definitely younger, definitely more digital savvy. And I think one characteristic that has been since the beginning, but mostly because of what Seth mentioned, which is fans have had to look for this content since the early stages of the MLS in different places, so they're digitally savvy. I also think it's a younger fan, it's a newer fan of the sport, which makes them more open to innovation. I mean, if you talk to a clear-cut soccer fan in one of these older Germany or England, they'll say, I want a clean shot. I don't want any overlays on the screen. Whereas the MLS fan is more open to doing some of these things. And it's great for us because it allows us to play and test things that in any other place with very vocal fans, as Amy's saying, we would be getting an earful whenever we boost.
Yeah, they definitely let you know.
Susannah, if I may, one word that sort of, I think, summarizes what everyone was saying, and it's, Olek used the word family. I think the word community is a good one as well, right? It is definitely a community of people. And it's worth pointing out, thanks to ESPN, Fox, and Univision, TSN, and TVA, our partners around the world, you don't have to search as hard for it anymore. We get excellent distribution, excellent coverage. But this idea of community with our fan base is so important to us as we grow the sport. And you think about, as we have more and more teams come into the league and how young the league is, 25 seasons, that community of fans is the one who's building that next set of traditions that will be for the next 25, 50 years. And that's really important to us, and it's really important to our fans as well.
Yeah, it's a really, really good point. Fans are so integral and important to not only the game itself, but our broadcast and delivering a good product. And let's move along to our next topic, because when we talk about something like that and delivering a product to the fans, you guys had a huge challenge, the soccer broadcast experience in a bubble. The MLS is Back tournament. Of course, we all know the pandemic forced everybody to sort of reimagine how they produce, distribute, and capture content. And you guys all came together and successfully executed the MLS's Back tournament in Orlando, 51 matches in 35 days, 51 matches in 35 days. Just going to say that again, all nationally televised in the United States and Canada, while in a controlled environment. Now, Seth and Amy, I know you guys had conversations that started back to early May about how this was all going to come together. And Amy, if I could start with you, if you could just give us a little look as to how those conversations started and what they looked like in the early planning stages of this.
So the early planning stages, I was in my backyard doing some brush cleanup, and Seth Bacon showed up on my phone. And it's always that moment of like, do you decline or do you take it when you see Seth calling? I was like, okay, I'm going to take it. And he said, hey, what would you think about trying to execute, a bunch of matches? Not how many, just a bunch of matches. So that was, the beginning of May, and this event started the beginning of July. And we were in the real throes of the pandemic. So the one thing I would say, and then I'll toss it to my colleague Seth, imagine it was a unique situation because in essence, we were going to be the production services provider for MLS, but we were also the client. So that was a first in my career. And so what we tried to do was figure out what is the best way to present MLS to an audience that was really starved for sports. How could we capture that fan that is just sampling? We knew we had the core, then they were dying for us to come back, but how do we get that, how do we catch the imagination of an audience that maybe didn't really know it? And then last, I would say, is that, we had to consider our partners, Fox, Univision, TSN, in terms of like, what do they want? We know what how ESPN wants to cover, but in this instance, we really talk about community. The broadcast community really came together. I don't care for these guys personally all that much, but I knew that I had to provide, this world feed that would satisfy, all of our partners.
Yeah, Seth, for you, when the idea of this sort of bubble tournament and just the whole concept of sports in a bubble, what did you see initially? I mean, there's a plethora of challenges, but what were the biggest ones in trying to set something like this up and execute it?
Aside from working with Amy Rosenfeld, there were
this is good. I'm here for the banter this morning. This is wonderful.
So we all had regular coffee for breakfast. We knew we had to get going again, right? For our fans, for the league, for sports, right? For humanity, right? Like this idea of getting back to some sense of normalcy. I think it's been so long in the pandemic now that it's almost becoming a little bit of like this next or new normal. But May, those were times when there was a lot of scary information, a lot of stuff you didn't know. Sports had disappeared. So it was really important to us to get back safely. That was the safety of our fans, of our competitors, of our clubs, of people that we worked with was most important. But when you looked at the challenge was you're building it from nothing, right? And so we literally had 8 weeks to build not only the broadcast plan, but the infrastructure as well, because where we went, for reasons that we had to go, both based on the virus and based on the number of teams we had to get into a controlled environment, number of games we had to play. It's literally, if you went there now, it is a wide open green field, right? And it has a little bit of infrastructure for some stands and some lights, and there's places where you can draw lines to make soccer fields or make them any other field. We made them soccer fields, and then we built a significant amount of physical and virtual infrastructure to build all around it. The workflow document on this one couldn't have been executed without ESPN. But certainly the help of Fox and Univision. There's literally feeds that we had to send to them, and then they had to send us back 4 different versions so we could send them around the world and put different graphics in English and different languages on them. It looked like a bowl of spaghetti when you look at the workflow document. So to be able to execute in the sense of partnership across this entire group was fantastic, and we learned a lot for sure. That's for sure.
Olek, a question for you. When all this was sort of coming together and you were brought into these conversations and sharing the feed with ESPN, once you sort of realized what this was going to look like and what it was going to entail, what surprised you the most about putting these broadcasts together?
I think what surprised me the most is the flexibility that we all are willing to have when something like this strikes. I mean, because one, Amy is super nice because she picks up Seth's phone, but which I don't usually do. That Seth calling is not good news. But it's incredible because what Amy didn't say is that also by the end of the tournament, first, we decided to have the tournament in Orlando when Florida was safe. And then by the time the tournament's going to start, Florida is one of the hotspots. And then by the end of the tournament, we have a hurricane coming. I mean, so all these things were just provided. I think what I was more surprised about is the flexibility that we had, and knowing that you could pick up a phone and saying, listen, this game is not going to happen tomorrow. It's going to happen the day after. And we would all be, okay, fine. I mean, and everybody was like, I'm sorry. It's like, listen, don't be sorry. I mean, we'll figure it out. And that doesn't happen on a regular basis. Like on a regular schedule, you have everything planned. And when somebody calls you to say the game is delayed 5 minutes, you're not happy. On this occasion, it was like, listen, we'll do whatever it takes for this to get this off the ground, and we'll manage.
Yeah, teamwork makes the dream work, as they say. One of the new technology, there was a lot of new technologies that were featured in the MLS's back tournament. We saw multiple feeds, extensive audio, virtual technology, new assets, drones, virtual fan parties. I mean, it was just a feast for the eyes visually and audibly when you were listening to these broadcasts. And Zach, one of the things that I think I enjoyed the most about these particular broadcasts were the enhanced audio elements that were implemented. Can you tell us a little bit about those in particular?
For sure. And before I jump into that, I just want to thank Seth and his team at the league office and Amy and her crew at ESPN. When you talk about short timeframes, I mean, it was pretty wild to think at the warp speed at which they moved. And I couldn't believe some of the conversations we were having. And I think one of the great things about it was very early in the process. Seth said there is no blueprint for something like this. And I think we all pushed each other, and we were all having so many conversations, myself with the, ESPN, myself with the league, and internally across it. And I think, Amy, you've done multiple World Cups. I've done a couple now. And I think when you're talking about being in a bubble and being in that pressure cooker environment of a tournament where it's coming at you so quickly, to be able to do what you guys did and keep everyone safe, drawing in new fans, it's remarkable, really remarkable. So I think for us, we wanted to keep that energy going at Fox. We wanted to draw upon our World Cup experience, Susannah, and we wanted to create a sense of urgency and really make this thing exciting. We were out in front of it, getting down there in Orlando, and we wanted to pull in those new fans. We saw a real opportunity. And so we did, have our enhanced audio, as we like to call it, where we brought in a Grammy Award-winning composer from the Hollywood Bowl to live score these matches. And these are, authentic and tailored crowd noise, basically from previous MLS matches that we curated over previous seasons. And it was a very nuanced approach. I think the seasoned soccer fan knows the difference between a professional foul and transition versus, I don't know, something like a shot across, that flies across the bar or something like that. So these guys got better as the tournament went on. And I think we were able to do a pretty good job. And look, we admit it's not for everybody, right? We know that it splits opinions. I think by and large, the feedback was good, but there are those fans out there who felt it inauthentic or felt that it was just added noise that wasn't necessarily adding to the broadcast, and on the flip side of that, I think what Amy and her team were able to do, and listening in on coaches and players actually communicating in match and stuff like that. There's some amazing stuff that was curated. We felt it worked for our audience. That's not to say we feel it works for everyone's audience, but for us it worked, and we really enjoyed doing that on these matches.
Yeah, it's funny too when you think about just the implementation of the noise. It's literally, that sound engineer is literally like a conductor conducting an orchestra and sort of moving with the game and feeling the crescendos. It was just it was something that I definitely appreciated and was new and very cool. Now, Amy, on the flip side of that, as Zach said, like in ESPN's broadcast, there was, you guys let the voices of the game sort of speak for themselves. So it's two different approaches. But when you look at sort of, all the new technologies that were implemented throughout the tournament, were there ones that you thought, man, we knocked it out of the park with this? And were there some that maybe you thought, there's room for improvement there, or maybe this one missed the mark a little bit?
Oh yeah, no, there were many that we took away that needed some improvement. But I would say, ultimately, so we joke around with Seth, but ultimately, you really want to partner with MLS because, when they say, we're ready to make this a test tube, let's try whatever, and they'll push the envelope. So, the right up to the commissioner, we're pushing, let's mic everybody, let's push the drones, so you need to have a willing partner to really experiment. As I look back, I'd be curious to what my colleagues would say. I thought that we made some real headway with the drones. I mean, one of the things we did in terms of this being in a bubble and no fans was, okay, let's take advantage. It's very sad we don't have fans, but how do we take advantage of that? So we were able to get the drones much closer than you would certainly with a full stadium. So, the drones, I mean, I would like to, don't worry, just the motion detector lighting.
She warned me about this, everyone.
Yeah,
it's not
don't worry that
it's the automated lights.
ESPN lost for lights. Don't worry about that. So the drones, I thought that was a big deal. Would I like to get them even closer? Yes, but we were able to get, I thought, impactful replays that ultimately, there were 2 VAR decisions that went to the drone look for the offside. So, would I want it closer? Absolutely. But, to be able to integrate it live into a match and live in a replay sequence was a big deal. I think, again, blowing smoke at MLS, the ability to mic the officials to get the live VAR conversation, I'm not sure we can go back. Seth and I have talked about it.
As a fan, don't, because it's wonderful.
That was a big deal. And we said, look, and God love Howard Webb, who was a big advocate for this.
Yeah.
This is an opportunity to really pull back the curtain. And frankly, it's a great PR opportunity for the officials to how they manage these things. So I thought that those were, look, the mics, what Zach did was fantastic. There were days where, we would have a 9 a.m. game and it were two teams that really probably hadn't woken up yet. And it was a little bit warm and it was pretty dead. And I was sitting like this thinking, God, I could really use that enhanced audio right now. But we were going to die on the hill of we're going to do all the audio. We're going to just listen as much as we can. If I had to do it over again, I'd put out even more microphones and really try. We had a mic on our Omnicam, like a spider cam. If I could get that lower with a more directional mic. So there were lessons that we learned, but I think we had some successes.
Yeah, the mic'd up VAR conversations were just a gift I didn't know I needed. But as you said, Amy, I don't think we can ever go back now because it is just such a tremendous pull behind the curtain. Olek, for you, for the Univision broadcast, now that you've had a couple months to kind of look back and think about all the technologies that were implemented for Univision, what are the big takeaways? What did you learn? What do you think you're going to take away and try to utilize moving forward?
So I honestly think what COVID is doing in the industry and in other industries is just accelerating change. I don't think many of the things that we did, we wouldn't have done a couple years down the road. But I think this was an opportunity where it's an acceleration. I mean, drones, remote production, audio, and things that we're doing were things that we all had been thinking and tinkering around with. But this not only provided the opportunity, but it's also an acceleration. An acceleration, why? Because I don't think we walk back in a lot of these things. I think remote production is going to become more prominent. I think standardization of production is going to become more prominent. I think we'll invest more money in content, and I think technologies are becoming cheaper and cheaper. I think pushing the envelope in terms of what the league can allow us to do, in terms of microphones, in terms of camera placement, in terms of drone placement, is we don't need to have those conversations in isolation anymore. It's like, you did, it worked. Why don't we re-implement it? And it's not a hypothetical discussion. So I think those are the things that I would be looking forward in terms of when we go back to normality in 2028, that we can actually implement some of these things.
That's optimistic, Olek. Oh, that's 2028. Oh boy. All right, let's move it along to our next topic, which is fan engagement, because in the absence of fans at actual stadiums, it's a huge challenge in trying to keep the supporter base engaged. And because we're seeing no fans at matches, or very few right now, Seth, what are some of the technology areas that you're right now exploring as a way to keep fans connected to their clubs and to the matches and to the league?
Yeah, so as everyone was talking about, the tournament in Orlando really did serve as a test tube for us, right? We were able to look at some new, innovative, different ways to think about how we engage the fans. That was a constant work in progress throughout the tournament, and Amy and Zach and Olek were huge help in the conversations. And you can't talk enough about the spirit of partnership from our partners as we produce these matches. You pick up the phone. I think I was on the phone with each of these folks minutes before, if not during the game, saying, hey, so-and-so's on the Jumbotron, or we've got a live shot now from a viewing party. How do we work that in? And this idea of how we're back channeling feeds. A lot of the innovation that came out of this around broadcast technology and fan engagement happened behind the scenes. It's things that people didn't see. And the way we were able to capture content and push it out to people and to take fans and integrate them into the broadcast were things that took a lot of people, and a lot of people on this call were a huge help and instrumental. So thank you to all of you for that. But when you look at the tournament, one of the main things we did was we wanted to take basically what people are looking at here, right? Which is, for lack of a better term, a Zoom call or a WebEx or whatever you want to call it. And how do you push that into the broadcast in an authentic way? And what we wanted to do was create a very compelling and engaging lean forward opportunity or platform for people. And we basically created a party every single night that was hosted by the clubs. We had a producer curate everything. We pushed it into the broadcast. We pushed it out and streamed it live. And what's happened is a lot of people have taken pieces of those. I don't think we got it exactly right. It's something that if you tried for a year, you'd still tinker and tinker and tinker. But if you watch our broadcasts, right? If you watch on Fox or on Univision or ESPN, or get on ESPN Plus and watch a bunch of games on a Saturday night, you start to see some of those best practices and best learnings from the tournament as far as integrating fans into those broadcasts. And the most key thing, and then I'll turn it over to my friends here, is you got to have buy-in from your broadcast partner, right? Everyone has to be aligned with this idea that engaging the fans and making them part of the broadcast is important. And we're very lucky that everyone does believe that, because that's how you attract new customers and new viewers. But you got to have that conversation. You got to have that buy-in so everyone's rowing in the same direction.
Yeah. Amy, question for you. When you hear kind of what Seth is saying about, the partners like buying in and making that a priority in the broadcasts, how do those areas of exploration, how do you see that tying into the needs of soccer fans? Like, what are they looking for, and how do those technologies sort of feed that need for them?
Well, I think that was part of the learning experience. I mean, I think, when we were trying to say, okay, the fans aren't here, how do we bring them here? And I think that this is an area that, at least for the time being, we're going to have to really lean into, because to keep the fans, one of the greatest things about MLS fans and their supporter groups is just how immersed they are in the whole experience. It's the march to the match. It's the mascot. It's Timber Joey. It's the sights and sounds that make it so special. And we didn't have any of that. So how do you immerse a fan and have the fan feel immersed when you're in the middle of Orlando on youth soccer fields? I think that I'd be curious as to how my colleagues feel about this. I think the challenge that we found was, in a sport that never stops, what are the appropriate times to integrate those sort of fan experiences while not detracting from the match itself? I'm not sure that that's an area I think the broadcasters, the ESPN folks, could have been better. I think that we just never really felt that sort of rhythm of where is the appropriate time to integrate them in. But I think, Olek's exactly right. I mean, I think we are now thinking about things that we would have said, oh, that'll be nice. We'll do that in a few years. Let's do something cool in the stadium. Well, there are no fans anymore, so we had to accelerate that. But I think we sort of touched on a way to integrate them in. I think there are like further iterations of this. I think we only scratched the surface.
Zach, I'm curious to get your follow-up on that. Do you kind of agree with what Amy just said?
Yeah, absolutely. I think she hit the nail on the head when she said, with a game that never stops, how do you integrate, fans into it? How do you get them
Sure.
engaged when they don't have all these normal tools that they have going to the match? The fan engagement, that sort of stuff. I think an area where Seth and the league really pushed us, which I thought was helpful, is once we started getting the celebrity fan involvement. I think that really helped. And I think it brings the viewer at home, who is at home in that Zoom room, a little closer to the match action. I'm in a chat room with Colin Hanks, and we're watching our beloved LAFC, and all of a sudden Colin is appearing on the broadcast, and then after the broadcast he's popping back in to our chat room. And so we were able, I think, to execute that 3 times over the course of the tournament. I think it was with Colin, it was with Timber Joey, and then it was with World Cup winner Kleberson, who's now a youth coach at the Philadelphia Union. We took some big risks. We put them in game. We double boxed the game. I was terrified, if I'm going to be honest with you. and we got lucky. And sometimes it pays off to get lucky. But we felt like, again, and this is what Seth keeps coming back to, and everyone I think on the panel, we felt like this was an appropriate time to take some risks and to see how this would pay off. And I think all 3 times it worked out. I think if I tried it a 4th, I'd get caught. But it worked, and I still think that's maybe in-game is not the right place. Maybe it is pre-match. A lot of our pre-games were very tight. Halftime is always tight. But I think if you can get that level of fan coming on your broadcast and then re-engaging with the fans during and after, I think in an environment mid-pandemic where you can't go to the stadium, I think that's the closest thing you can get to that sort of authentic in-stadium feel.
Yeah, for sure. And Olek, for you, we're running out of time here, 1.5 minutes left. But for you, where are you guys looking for inspiration and how to continue to engage fans? Like what kind of conversations are you having? Are you looking at other leagues? Like, what is that process like?
Well, I think we're in the same process as everybody else, which is trying to figure out how to integrate some of these things when we don't have 15 minutes of commercials, because we have to make good on the people that we've sold, right? When we can take a little bit more time in the pregame. I think we are looking at providing separate experiences, right? If you are able to tailor the experience to the user from a digital standpoint, and maybe serve Susannah an graphic overlay product on your second screen while you're watching a cleaner feed on television, that's kind of where I think we're going to start going, allowing people to choose the experience they want to have when they're enjoying a game. So that's what we're looking forward to.
Love it. Well, we've got about 20 seconds left. Any quick final thoughts from anyone before they pull me out of here?
It's gonna be a fast year. There's going to be speed is the name of the game. I think that's the key.
Hold on, everybody. Well, thank you so much to our panel. And right now we're going to turn it back over to Ben. Thank you so much for listening.